Hey everyone, and welcome back to my Legion class roundup, where I level every class to max level, gear them up, play every spec, and share my thoughts with you. Today's episode is on the Demon Hunter. In the alpha, their visuals received universally positive praise, really showcasing how far Blizzard had came on the animation side of things. Their gameplay, well, it was less well received, and I've got to admit, I was very much more towards the negative end of that scale. While I thought they were fun, hopping from mob to mob, I didn't think they were particularly great in some other scenarios, but then they improved a hell of a lot over the beta process, to the point where I thought they were pretty fun, but maybe more of a side class. Now, not to spoil the video, but that has changed a hell of a lot. The DPS spec of the Demon Hunter is fast, agile, and a hell of a lot of fun to play. It's also quite accessible as well, and it's got a talent tree that does support a few different playstyles. Havoc Demon Hunters enjoy excellent movement that really helps with target switching. They've got powerful burst AoE and really great single target damage. The overarching power fantasy as well of the Demon Hunter just is so well embodied by the Havoc spec and its gameplay. It's also a very accessible spec, which does lead us into a challenging discussion about throughput and difficulty and how that should be balanced between the game's specs. Still, that doesn't change the fact that playing this spec makes you feel powerful, and feeling powerful is a lot of fun. I play games for fun, therefore it's a pretty great fit. Let's cover the basics of how this spec plays though. At its core, it is a builder-spender spec, so you build up Fury, your resource, with Demon's Bite and Fellblade, if you're talented that way, and then you spend it on a variety of things, like Chaos Strike, Blade Dance, and I-Beam. You then have Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat, which are two movement-based abilities, but Fell Rush isn't like, say, a monk's roll. No, Fell Rush is actually used in combat. Then your main cooldown is Metamorphosis, which turns you into a massive demon and then replaces Chaos Strike and Blade Dance with empowered versions of themselves, and then it gives you 30% Leech and 25% Haste. So basically, you're just an absolute beast, and the increased haste really does up that pace of gameplay, and the addition of the leech just makes you feel like you are invincible for that very short, well, actually pretty long period of time. Meta really does last. And then we've got I-Beam. This does a massive amount of AoE damage, and if you've got a certain talent, it then turns you into a demon, like via miniature meta, for a few seconds, giving you access to those new abilities and that leech, which once again is a really, really fun, awesome interplay of abilities. The spec just does a great job, I think anyway, of getting a lot of gameplay out of a small number of abilities. It retains gameplay depth without making it too dense or fiddly. Now, this does also make it kind of accessible. With a bit of practice, really anyone can perform well with the Demon Hunter, provided they don't get motion sick or, sort of struggle with kind of high movement scenarios. It also really is a spec where your talent choices really change how it plays. For a while, the momentum build was the best. Well, sort of. Basically, momentum would give you a damage buff after using Fell Retreat, or Fell Rush or Vengeful Retreat. Now, for a lot of people, that was too fiddly, not really that fun. Even though they might have enjoyed another build, they would have maybe felt forced to play the optimal one. And then there's another similar example going on right now with Demon Blades. Demon Blades is a talent that replaces your main generator, Demon's Bite, with a mechanic that just makes your auto attacks have a chance to generate fury and do a bit more damage. Now, this basically removes a button, and it shifts your focus onto the other abilities, but it can make the gameplay sometimes feel a little bit slower and a little bit less spammy. Now, I found that this was not much fun at all at the lower gear levels, but that the general pace of resource generation at higher gear levels did allow it to work out fine. Now, these two things, they just serve as examples of how talent balance could actually impact your enjoyment of the spec, whether a playstyle that you like is sort of in vogue at the minute or not. The Havoc Demon Hunter is also a perfect fit for one of Legion's most popular types of content, Mythic Plus dungeons. They've got awesome burst AoE due to I-Beam, and then that turns you into a demon, and you can use the empowered Blade Dance, which is really fun. The cooldowns often line up with trash packs a lot, so you just find yourself being able to push out insane numbers in Mythic Plus. Blade Dance and Fell Rush also, really tie into that as well quite well. It's just so much fun to play. It almost feels like the spec is just designed for Mythic Plus. A really, really fun time. And I was honestly surprised just how much I enjoyed playing this class. I'm actually considering maining this instead of my Hunter. This spec is just flat out more fun to me now. A combination, I think, of just various, class changes and the greatly increased item level since the beta testing has just resulted in this slowly morphing into something that was maybe lukewarm for me initially, but has sort of transformed into something that I really love playing. Now, they also have great survivability. Killing mobs drops soul fragments. Running into the soul fragments will heal you up, which is pretty cool. Then, in combat, you can often stun targets with Chaos Strike. Might be forgetting the name, and then you can use something like a talented eye beam, which will put you into metamorphosis for 8 seconds, where the leech will then heal you up. And this all allows for this really aggressive gameplay style with next to zero downtime. Even running between mobs is short because you're just fell rushing. It's hard to overstate just how cool the abilities are for this class. I know it might seem like a kind of a scrubby thing to some, but I think, caring about the visuals and stuff like that is important, and UX design, user experience design, is something that really does contribute to enjoyment. Everything here looks brilliant and just reinforces the power fantasy of the class, especially like Fel Barrage and I-Beam and stuff like that. It's very apparent to me that Blizzard had a very clear vision of what they wanted this class to be, and they really seem to have nailed that. But is it fair to say they might out-DPS a Feral Druid? Perhaps not. I think this is a pretty easy class to play, far easier than Feral, so it's a really hard question when we think about it from a game design perspective, but the purpose of this video series is fun first, and I actually do love playing Feral, by the way, but at least, for me, based on fun, Havoc Demon Hunter gets a glowing recommendation. So Vengeance is a really strange tank spec, based on my very limited experience of tanking. What I will say is that I think it's really fun to play, especially with dungeon content. Its mechanics will, I think, feel at home for anyone who is coming from a DPS background, and the general pace of gameplay can be quite exhilarating with them. Leading the charge in a dungeon as Vengeance, leaping from pack to pack, shredding things, it's fucking epic, but just don't leave everyone else behind because you can still die. I've seen quite a few Havoc Demon Hunters just sort of, zoom off into the distance and pop, they're dead. So their gameplay, to me, doesn't feel super dissimilar to Havoc. Your main resource is pain, and this can be generated by taking damage, but also by your abilities. Shear is your single target filler spell that you can just spam away with. Then Fellblade can be talented once again to give you, first of all, a charge, which is pretty cool, but also some more pain generation. Then Immolation Aura basically just sets everything around you on fire, lasts for a few seconds, and over that amount of time, it will generate pain. Pretty cool, very edgy spell when you think about the lore, which is pretty fitting. Continuing the theme, actually, of being an edgelord, we then have soul fragments. Killing enemies spawns a soul fragment. Collecting them will heal you, but using shear has a chance of spawning a lesser soul fragment, which is similar, but just gives you less resources. These tie into one of your main spenders, Soul Cleave. This is a cleave attack that strikes all enemies in front of you and consumes all nearby soul shards. So basically, it hoovers up all the soul shards to heal you. This means that nearby soul shards act as a secondary resource for this class, which is something that's quite well utilized by talents such as Soul Barrier or perhaps Fracture, which can generate more of them. We then have Demon Spikes. It's your main physical damage active mitigation spell. It's got a pretty high uptime actually, and it can be used to increase your DPS depending on your talents. Empower Wards is your magical damage mitigation, and then you've got Fiery Brand, which is a 1-minute cooldown that will decrease incoming damage from that target as well. Then your big defensive cooldown is, of course, Metamorphosis. It's different from the Havoc version. Instead of turning into a DPS sort of demon, you turn into just a big chunky bastard with a lot of health and 100% more armor for 15 seconds. It also gives you pain per second, which means that you will be regenning things like health a lot more via Soul Cleave. We then have our various sigils, which can do AoE damage with the Flame one, Silence with the Sigil of Silence, or Fear with the Sigil of Misery. Then there's also the Sigil of Chains. We don't have Fell Rush, but we do have Infernal Strike, which is similarly awesome. Kind of like Heroic Leap, actually. You jump up into the air and slam down, doing really strong AoE damage. This is really powerful, and it's something that's made even more powerful damage-wise by some of your talents. We've then got some really cool talents like Fell Devastation, which is a frontal channeled cone that just does a load of damage and leeches health to you. Generally, I found that this was just a really fun to play tank class for quite a lot of different bits of content. Looking through various guides, it seems like their talent balance is pretty good, with most talents being viable in one form of a use case or another. As an inexperienced tank, its gameplay was close enough to a DPS class to allow it to be really quite easy to pick up while still having most of the tank mechanics that we all know, like say, active mitigation. It's easy to pick up, it's got a pretty strong toolkit, great visuals, great flexibility, does some pretty nice damage. Overall, I think, really fun and a great starter tank. That said, from what I hear, it's not really ideal for serious raiding. If you wanted to do that, maybe another tank spec would be something that you should consider over a Vengeance Demon Hunter. That's just based off the research that I've done. Okay, so let's talk about class content. Demon Hunters have great class content. Now, I'm coming from the perspective of mainly being a hunter. It seems like we had the worst class content in the game as Hunter, so in fairness, anything would be an improvement, but this one was pretty cool. They actually attempt to do things such as have character arcs, have a cast of characters, tell a story, all these cool little things which they just didn't do that well with the Hunter one. I mean, it's WoW storytelling, it's still not great, but the Demon Hunter campaign sort of, it's okay with its edginess and all of that. It's not really deep, but you know what, fuck it, it's pretty cool, and that's good enough for me. Comparing the 7.2 Demon Hunter campaign to the Hunter one was kind of funny. The Demon Hunter one involved spaceship antics and scenarios and awesomeness, where the Hunter one was just like an Elwyn Forest questline. Overall, I'd say the Demon Hunter class content is quite fun indeed. You're doing fun things, it's okay with its kind of, gratuitous edginess and all that stuff. And yeah, it works out, and it's pretty fun. So let's talk about pains and gains. Generally, the main pain point for this is, for an example, if momentum ends up being the best talent choice, but you don't enjoy playing it. If I remember correctly, this is actually one of the things that drove Ghost away from his Demon Hunter towards other classes, and I totally understand why. I don't really like the Demon Blade's talent either, conceptually, because it removes the button, but I think it's, right now it's the best option to roll with, so I'm kind of doing that, and I'm still having fun, but it is one of those things where the way that the wind blows as far as talents go just might not make it fun to play for you. Then for Vengeance, a pain point is that it doesn't seem like it really scales up to the top end of things when it comes to, the high-end tanking content, if that's something that you want to do. Overall, though, I think the overriding theme of this video is that it's generally a really fun class with brilliant visuals, that's, just sort of enjoyable to play, especially in things like dungeons and the world. So I think for a lot of the content that the majority of the player base are doing, it's actually a pretty great option. If you want to be pushing mythic raids, maybe you want to do something different, or maybe you won't want to have a Vengeance one as a tank, but certainly, from my perspective, very enjoyable. So I guess to conclude, I think this is going to be my main for a while. Playing a lot of it over the last few weeks has been a lot of fun. I honestly, this kind of kept me interested in the game at a time where I was so bored of both my marksmanship and BM Hunter. So at the very least, I would heartily recommend this as a second class to, just give it a go, because it's just got a gameplay feeling that's fresh, and, at the same time, it's low stress to play. It's just sort of clean, simple fun that's visually, nice and good to look at. Yeah, that's essentially my thoughts on the Demon Hunter with Legion. That said, at lower gear levels, it was a lot less fun. But by the time that I was up to 780 with 2 legendaries, or 880 even, that's when I was really having a hell of a lot of enjoyment with it. That's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think about the Demon Hunter down in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.